Called basically the October meeting of the McKinney Sons of the American Revolution to order. I'm acting as the president here tonight. He's trying to handle kids being out of school and all sorts of things. So anyway, he's out, as are several others, quite a few others in fact. So anyway,
Vacations.
yeah, all our. So if you wouldn't mind rising and for on this occasion, Heavenly Father, send us your grace and understanding to conduct the business of our society. Send us words of wisdom and point our paths and direction to fulfill our role as guardians of our national heritage. Join in with us as we endeavor to honor the dreams of our forefathers in your son's name. Amen. Amen. Okay. So let's see here. We'll go to the next up. We're going to do our pledges. Pete, would you lead us in the pledge to the U.S. flag?
Sure. Please join me in the pledge to the flag of the United States of America. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And then let's see your applause. I'm sorry, no. Mark, I'll do that for Mark. Okay, you'll join in with me. The Texas flag. Texas flag.
Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to the Texas, one state under God, one and indivisible.
The applause for me. Of course, let's hear our pledge.
We, the descendants of the heroes of the American Revolution, who by their sacrifices established the United States of America, reaffirm our faith and principles of liberty and our constitutional republic, and solemnly pledge ourselves to defend them against every foe.
And Richard, the mission statement, please.
The Sons of the American Revolution honors our revolutionary or patriot ancestors by promoting patriotism, serving our communities, educating and inspiring future generations about the founding principles of our country.
Okay, thank you. Be seated. Okay, we're going to do our introductions now. We do pass around, so I'll let James introduce himself right quick. Okay. Oh, you turn yourself. You get in. That's good. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
I'm Jim Adams, and I'm a member of the Dallas chapter of the SAR. And tonight I'm going to talk about actually my wife's patriot ancestor and patriot ancestor. Most SAR, Tommy Spellick. So in the presentation, I will be Tommy Spellick, my story. So if you have questions that are up to date, I'll take my hat off and I'll Jim Adams.
Okay. All right. I'm Tom Milson. You know me. This is Carol.
I'm Carol Wilson, Tom's better half.
Good evening, I'm Pete McClellan. I'm the Sergeant at Arms for the chapter. I'm Ted Wilson from the Edmund Barrow chapter in Sherman and dual member of McKinney.
Gary Mohan, member here and also a member with Thompson Jefferson chapter in Concord, California.
Nice. Kevin Ennis, McKinney chapter, and dual member with the Atlanta chapter.
Yep.
Chris Bonaparte, registrar, McKinney chapter.
Peter Ford, treasurer of the McKinney chapter.
Law Student Secretary, and online we have Jerry Kenny.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so tonight we're honored to have Jim Battles here. He's already mentioned a little bit about what he's going to talk about. I think everybody's got a copy of his file, also sent it out with the invitation. Quite impressive. Was very honored to have you here, especially your years of service with the Navy. Thank you for your service to our country. And so instead of me reading all of this, which I would stammer through all of these terms and stuff, and 10 minutes later, you know, he would get the star. I'm just gonna turn it right over to him so he can tell us about this wonderful topic that he's already chatted with you about. So with that, we'll turn it over to you.
Okay, well. Tonight's topic is global mountain, and so I'll explain a little bit how we got to that title. I'm Thomas Elliott, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about myself. So if I get going on too long, just I'll try to speed it up as much as possible. But the first thing I need to tell you a little bit about the background of the Elliott family. These are tales from my father. And he informed me, although I was born in Ireland, that I'm really a Scots and part of the Elliott. Now, if you know anything about Scotsmen, the Elliott line is from the Lilliesdale Valley, just on the other side of the Cambridge Wall. And the Elliots were part of a borderland plan. And the Elliots were border reavers. Now, for those of you who haven't heard of the border reavers were the old English term for reaver was thief. And we were the best cattle thieves and sheep stealers there were on the border. The border reavers were the best light cavalry in the 17th century. So we did our raiding on horseback. And to give you an idea, in the Lilliesdale Valley, our next door neighbors were the Armstrong. And together, we Elliots and the Armstrongs could get 4,000 mounted men to go raiding across the border. So if you were on the other side of the border, you could be surprised by a couple of border reavers coming to relieve you of your cattle. Well, when Scotland and England towns were combined under James VI of Scotland and who became James I of England, having these border reavers around was not something that we wanted to put up with. So we exported a bunch of the border reavers to Northern Ireland to keep in check with Irish, and he hung a few. But anyway, in 1701, between 1701 and 1720, was the Great Northern War. Have any of you ever heard about the Great Northern War?
No.
Most of us haven't. Well, it took place, it was a war in the Baltic and with the northern Baltic states against Russia in the south. Russia under Peter the Great was trying to move out of St. Petersburg and control. It was trying to turn the Baltic into essentially a Russian lake. And Sweden and Finland, which were combined as one country, the northern Baltic states took kind of umbrage. And so there was a really war. Well, my father at 1713, was recruited to join the Polish cavalry and went to Poland. Now, many of the border reavers were actually recruited as mercenaries to fight in various wars when the continents and some of the lands. And so father's cavalry unit was stationed in the Polish city of Gdansk. Now, what's interesting about Gdansk is that it's the major port city in Poland. Now, you probably have heard of Gdansk with the solidarity movement and other kinds of things. But one of the things that when Father got there, he discovered that there was quite a Scottish community of Scottish traders that were involved in the grain trade. So after 4 years or so in the Polish cavalry, my father settled down in Gdansk and started working for a Scottish merchant. Now, there was the Hanseatic League, which was Norway, Denmark, Netherlands, and Scotland, called the Hanseatic League, because there was a lot of grain grown in Poland and so there was a lot of trade. So he met a young lady who was the daughter of another Scottish merchant, and they were married and had several children. Now, some of the issues that were present in the Great Northern War are coming into play today. There's a Russian Vlad the Bad who's trying to be another Peter the Great wannabe. And so there, instead of the coalition of northern kingdoms and things, we have NATO who don't want the Baltic to be a Russian lake. The Navy, US Navy has taken the, for those of you who follow Navy stuff, Navy destroyers have a wonderful missile defense system, the Aegis missile defense system. And the Navy has decided to take that system, the missile components, and create Aegis ashore bases. They have one in Poland and one in Romania. Well, a compatriot member of the SAR is my son Tim, who I recently had the opportunity to promote to captain. And he's currently at the Naval War College. And in December, he is going to be commander of that Aegis ashore base just south of the Baltic. So there's an old saying from John Paul Jones, and when he was commanding officer of an Aegis class destroyer, and he was getting ready for one. No one does to bring the car back, his car back. That's his silence. Watching walk back to the theater. John Paul Jones said, "Give me a fast ship because I intend to go armed way." Well, at that time, Tim was taking his destroyer. He was at the beginning of the invasion of Ukraine to escort a Russian task force into the Mediterranean. So we'll serve time in the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, and played with Houthis. And now he's going into harm's way again, but this time it's not going to be on a fast ship, but a well-armed base in the Baltic. Well, getting back to my story, descendant. My wife, Mary Johnson, died of childhood fever, and I was left a widow with 2 small boys, and it just was too much grief and other things. So I moved my family to Northern Ireland, to the city of Inniskill, which is right on the edge of Northern Ireland is often referred to as Ulster, between Inniskill, so it's kind of in the middle. Anyway, economic times got kind of rough in Northern Ireland, and the Penn family from Pennsylvania had decided that they acquired some western lands from the Iroquois called the Walking Tree, and it was the distance a man could walk in a day and a half. And that would be the land that the Iroquois would sell to Penfenton. Well, Penfenton, being wise, hired some really fast runners. And they extended that area almost up to the edge of the Appalachian Mountains. The Iroquois kind of thought maybe they might be screwed. But anyway, the Penn family was offering really good deals. And they had determined in 1720 they would not sell any Western Pennsylvania land except to the Scots Irish, because they knew that they could handle the Irish and were border reavers, they could handle the Native Americans. And so father decided he would take up Penn family and got a warrant for lands in what was known as the Cumberland Valley. And in 1637, we sailed from Ireland to Philadelphia, and then father bought some horses and the Conestoga wagon, and we headed to the Cumberland Valley, to Middlesex Township. To give you an idea of where that is, this is a kind of a map of the area, and you can see Middlesex up there, just below that line. Now, on the other side is the Blue or Kidney Mountains. And so the area that we settled in was the Cumberland Valley, Middlesex. And then we weren't the only family moving into that area. That the Campbells and the Armstrong made the migration. There was plenty of game in the Cumberland Valley, so you could do some hunting and get deer hides, and which were quite valuable. So my father and my older brothers, Johnson and John, who were, when they were born in Poland, father reminded, you're Scotsman, as I was born in Ireland, and some of my other brothers, we were Scots. Anyway, they would go hunting, and they were advised that if you were going to be serious about hunting, you needed a better rifle than a smooth bore, like Fowler or musket. And so they were informed that you could go into Lancaster, and there were a number of German gunsmiths who were making flintlock rifles. And this is a Pennsylvania rifle. By the way, there's no such thing as a Kentucky rifle. They were all made in Pennsylvania. Now, the advantage of these long rifles, they were particularly long barreled, and they were rifled, and so they were a good hunting. And so we had Pennsylvania. Now, on the other side of,
Break that for you.
yeah. Being very fun to look at, that's a non-fire reproduction. So you're not likely to.
Probably what it is the other way.
Oh.
Yeah.
What do you want to add? I got it. All right, there you go.
So over the mountain, there was a lovely valley called Sherman's Valley. And it turned out that the area west of the Alleghenies was kind of a game reserve for the various native Indian tribes that used that as a common hunting area, so there were lots of game. As my younger brother Edward and I went to be teenagers, we would do some hunting, we would borrow father's rifle. And father told us he would not buy us a rifle. We had to get enough hides and pay for it ourselves. And also that we couldn't borrow his horses anymore, because the trails over the mountains were basically Indian paths. There were no roads. So you would have to go, if you were to do any amount of hunting, you would, have to bring the hides and everything back in a pack horse, so you had to have a horse to ride. And at least 1, 2, or 3 horses to pack everything out. Well, we got to this valley in Lovely Freaking, it was a meadow. And we discovered this funny looking, and it wasn't a cow, and it was bushy and other thing. And so, between Edward and I, we each shot one. And it turned out that was what was known as a buffalo. And so we skinned and tanned the hides. One of the things that we would do is sometimes we tan the hides in the field using the Native American tanning method of brain tanning. That's when you take the contents of the animal's brain and put it in water and then soak the hide and rinse it out and then smoke it. And that's a way of hiding the tan. Because if you're gonna bring it back home and, because it's old smelly. Yeah. The latest.
Right.
So we became what was known as the long hunters. Now, long hunters would go over the mountains and do hunting, either trading with Indians or shooting and getting the furthest stuff. So you could get a Kentucky, Pennsylvania rifle for about 3 good deer hunts. So when we got our long rifles, and our older brother took a single Lancaster, and we had about 27 deer hides, some bear skins, other stuff, which we were able to purchase our rifles, Edward and I went. They also could purchase a horse. And we didn't have to borrow the farm. So at about 15, I thought I was really cool to have my own rifle, my own horse to go hunting. And so a long hunter's kit would be a tarp you could use as a tent, and then you'd usually put one of your hides down on the ground, and then you have your cooking gear and other things. And that was your kit. And so often you would wear the sort of long hunter's outfit was usually a hunting shirt, which is plain shirt, linen shirt, and then some leather jeans, and then we would often take a blanket and turn that into a coat. And the reason I'm not wearing it right now is because they're really warm. The advantage of a blanket coat is a good wool coat retains heat when wet and became quite a trade item. So, then you can carry a spare one. Well, in Sherman's Valley, or just on the edge of there was a tavern established by a man named George Rogan, who was an Indian trader. He had his tavern, and we would hang out and swap tall tales with other long hunters. Well, Rogan would often do expeditions into the Ohio country. And of course, there are no roads, so if you're gonna do traveling and trading, you can't take your stuff by wagon. He would have partners in Philadelphia who would sponsor him and pay for the trade routes, and then he would take a pack horse into the mountains. Now, a pack horse could carry about 200 pounds of gear. So if you're going to take a pack train into the Ohio country, you needed your pack horses and a spare for every pack horse. So on the first trip we made, we had 15 pack horses, which means we had 15 extras. And so at 17, I got hired on by a program to go to the Ohio. Now, for those of you who aren't from that area, you may know the forks of the Ohio are where Monongahela and the Allegheny River, Monongahela come to the south, the Allegheny from the north. And there was William Trent who established a trading post. So we took our pack horses and went to the Ohio country. And you look out from the ridges and you look across to the river and you say how beautiful. Well, the term Ohio means in Algonquin, beautiful living.
Is that where Pittsburgh is now?
And yes. Now, you'll see on the south side of the Ohio River is another hunting preserve that was known in Algonquin as Kentucky. Now, there weren't any Indians living there. The Indians were living upriver to the north, primarily the Shawnee, near the mouth of a river called the Scioto. In their community, got sort of Anglicized, called Chillicothe. Anyway, in that first trip, we stayed in Trent's Fort for about a month, and I got to know some of the long hunters that were coming up from Virginia, and Christopher Guest, and Rogan wanted to do some trading north along a lake in the north, to trade with the Seneca Indians at the area by a river, sort of in its sort of pronunciation in English, known as the Cuyahoga River. And for those of you who don't know the geography of the Ohio country, that's where Cleveland, Ohio. So the Cleveland Indians really should have been the Seneca Indians. So we stayed in with the Seneca Indians trading for the winter. And during that winter, there was a Frenchman who showed up. I mean, they made the name Seguin and said, "Hey, you English have to get out of here. This is really Frenchy." Now, the French had established at the western boundaries of Lake Erie, which became known as Fort Detroit. And on the eastern end of the Lake Erie was Fort Niagara. And he said, basically, this whole area is French, English, you know, the land. Well, anyway, after 6 months in the wilderness, we had to take our pack horses and take them to Philadelphia. Now, in the time that between when I first arrived in Philadelphia in 1637 and 1645, Philadelphia had grown quite extensively. And Rogan had taken kind of a shine to me, and so he introduced me to his trading partners, William Trent Sr. and another trader named William Shippen. Now the name Shippen may ring a bell with some. William Shippen had a daughter by the name of Peggy Shippen, and it turns out later that Peggy Shippen married a guy named Benedict Arnold. Another person he introduced me to was a local politician who was very active in the legislature and was a newspaper and a printer. You may have heard of him. His name was Franklin, Benjamin Franklin. And he was very interested in our experience in the Western countries and others. And I told him I was interested in, hopefully at some point getting some land in Sherman's Valley. He said, well, we're working on it. Yeah. But anyway, after 3 trips with Grogan, my brother and I decided we would go on our own and be long hunters, but we would not do trading because we couldn't afford to buy the trade goods. Now, the trade goods for the Indians were blankets, premium shirts, knives, hatchets, kettles, and other things. Brogan liked to use brass because it's a little lighter than that's. And on one of our trips, was a settlement just up the Allegheny River called Walktown. And Walktown was the Delaware village. They liked to trade with English. And the leader of the village, Native American, by the name of Half-King. And on one occasion, we were at Walktown and we ran into Christopher Gist, who knew me, and he introduced me, well, I had known him, that Half-King, to a young Virginia major who may have heard of Major George Washington. And he'd been sent out by Governor Dinwiddie of Virginia to talk to the French and for LaBeouf to tell them they should get out of the forts along the Ohio. Well, you can imagine what the French told Major Washington. Basically, no pound of sand.
Right.
And so he was quite disappointed. I asked him what he was going to do. So, well, I guess I got to go back to Governor Dinwiddie and say, hey, they're not going to leave. Well, in 1754, there was a conference of the different colonies and the Native American called the Albany Conference. And at that conference, the Iroquois agreed to sell to the Penn family lands west of the Allegheny Mountains, Pennsylvania. And it was known as the Albany Purchase. Well, they opened in February of 1755, Landau started to sell land. I was the first in line, because I wanted that land on Buffalo Creek in Sherman's Valley. So I got about 200 acres, and my brothers and I all got together. And so we got land on Buffalo Creek, and one of the first things we did was to build a blockhouse in kind of a fortified house, and then put a fence around it, and some cabins inside the fort. Because we weren't sure of the situation with the Native Americans. So we settled in. Well, in July of 1755, the British decided they really wanted to get the French out. The French had driven William Trent and the Virginians out of the forts of Ohio, and they built a fort called Fort Duquesne. And the British really wanted the French out, so they commissioned Major General Braddock to go with the French out. So he had 2 regiments of British regulars and Virginia Colonial Militia marched on, headed up to Braddock. Well, the Virginians wanted particularly to cut a road, so they were hoping for good trade in the Ohio country. So Braddock is going along building this road. Well, he gets close to Fort Duquesne and was ambushed. And I think you all know about Braddock's defeat. About 900 British soldiers and so forth. George Washington helped them to retreat back. Well, basically, after the Braddock's defeat, all hell broke out in London, Pennsylvania. Well, next to Sherman's Valley is the Tuscarora Valley. And man named Brigham built Fort that was a settlement. And in July of 1756, Brigham's Fort came under attack. A number of prisoners were taken, people killed. And the same group of Indians moved on to the fortification. Our little settlement was known as Elliott's Fort. And between February of 1755 and July 17, a number of people had settled into Sherman's Valley, this wonderful valley. So a number of the residents moved into our fortified area. And we noticed that there were a group of Indians coming in on the edge of our field. So we climbed up into the second level. And I had bought a couple of extra rifles. And so we were able to pick off several of the Indians. They were a little surprised to run into settlers who had rifles that, as you consider a raid, they kind of disappeared. And so my Edward's wife, Margaret Kincaid, had said, "Hey, we can't stay here. It's not safe. I'm not going to lose my stuff or have my kids captured." So we all moved back over the mountains to the probably started in the Middlesex County. Now, one of the problems that we faced in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania legislature were not particularly enthusiastic about establishing militia. Now, Benjamin Franklin had introduced what was called militia association. You could have an association that was permitted by the government, but was not a government entity. And so he advised us that we should, in Sherman's Valley, create an association. And so there was another settlement, the Robinson's Fort, which was about 6 miles away, and 7 minutes away. Anyway, I was able to kind of get my revenge because we organized, Pennsylvania finally organized a few battalions, the 2nd, 3rd Battalion of colonial militia participate in what was now the French and Indian War. And there was a settlement north of Logtown called Kentucky that was a Delaware settlement. By this time, Half King had lost some of his influence, and the new chief of the Delaware, known as Captain Jaker, had allied himself with the French. And at the French behalf, they were trying to wipe out all the settlements in the Sherman's Valley and all the valleys and push across. Well, we organized our 2nd Battalion to go and attack Japan, and it was all colonial militia, no British refugees. And of course, we were mostly long hunters and others used to the trails and knew the area. We were able to sneak up on the village, attack it, and we're actually able to kill Captain Jacobs, and that offered some relief to the folks in Western Pennsylvania. Now, the folks to the south, Maryland, they decided to build a fort for Frederick, and they decided to build it out of stone and some of the people complained Boston, but it was never attacked. Native Americans were not attacked. Well, after the death of Braddock, the British still were determined they were going to get the French out of Fort Duquesne. So they appointed a new Major General, General Ford. And so he left through Philadelphia. Now, he had a second in command who was a Swiss mercenary named Henry Leclerc. Now, one of the advantages we had in Leclerc being Swiss was less prejudiced as the British regulars were, and would periodically pay attention to what we locals had to say about dealing with Native Americans and other stuff. Now, Forbes was a Scotsman, and he didn't think much of us Colombian militia, but when he found out that a number of us were Scots Irish, his attitude changed a little bit. So Forbes decided to move on Fort Duquesne, and he used Carlisle, and you can see on this map, it's a comparison of Forbes Road and Braddock Road. The Braddock Road came up from the south in Williamsburg, that direction. Forbes started at Carlisle and moved west, and he built several forts along the way. And in the lead was Colonel Bocat, who again would listen to read locals. Unfortunately, General Forbes was fairly ill, suffered from stomach problems, and often had to be carried by litter. He couldn't ride on horseback. And so the captain, the Pennsylvania militia would move forward. We got to build a fort called Fort Ligonier, which is about 40 miles from Fort Duquesne. And the rest of the army would move up. And at Fort Ligonier, the forces from Virginia, which were now led by Colonel George Washington, moved up. And so there was a big debate as to how to get to Fort Duquesne. The Virginians wanted the Forbes and Army to use the old Braddock Road. And we Pennsylvanians and other stuff said we should take the trails in north, which was closer and easier. And so we would take that, because I was assigned with scouting. We took some of the British Army engineers, explored the, and the British engineers said, yeah, the Potomac path is better. That really upset the Virginians, because they really wanted the road. Now, part of the reason is whoever had the trails and other stuff to the west, would you come up through Philadelphia, through Colorado that way, or go up from Williamsburg north in that direction? But anyway, we moved out from Fort Ligonier, and when we got to just to the edge above Fort Duquesne, our scouting unit and some of the Virginia, we saw smoke coming out of the fort and then heard explosions. Well, as it turned out, the French decided they were no match for the British forces. Part of that was because there was a treaty with the Native Americans, the Treaty of Easton, which the British said will limit the settlement to the west. And so all the Indian allies of the French had abandoned. And so the French decided to get out of Dodge. And so we went in, and General Ford decided to rebuild the fort and name it after the current Prime Minister of England, who was a big supporter of trying to take out America, and called it Fort Pitt. And of course, the community that grew up around Fort Pitt became known as Pittsburgh. Well, Ford's returned to Philadelphia by litter and died shortly after. And the British named General Abercrombie to be in charge of it. And Abercrombie decided that rather than move north from Fort Pitt to take out the French fortifications, he decided that it was best for us if we took Fort Niagara at the head of the lake, that all forts in the Ohio country would fall, that is the major supply. So here we are with the capture of Fort Pitt. So we moved across the lake to surround Fort Niagara. And we were able to ambush the French column's relief. Now, George Cronin and William Johnson, who was the British agent, were very good at Indian language and other stuff, and they convinced the Native Americans in Fort Niagara that, hey, the French are going to lose this. And so all the Native American allies of the French left the fort, and they had to surrender. And so you got, sure enough, after the fall of Niagara, all the rest of the French forts were abandoned. Well, eventually, General Wolfe captured Quebec, and sort of things got quiet. So we finally decided in March of 1876 that we can go back to Elliot's Fort. And well, one of the problems that was that it turned out in the Albany Treaty, the Iroquois had sold the lands of western Pennsylvania. And they didn't really own that land. It really belonged as a communal hunting ground. And so a number of the Native Americans were somewhat dissatisfied with that. And one of the Native American chiefs and leaders of the Huron tribe was very dissatisfied with the term by the name of Pontiac. But most of us know the name Pontiac because of the fast cars. But anyway, Chief Pontiac rallied a number of the Native American tribes, and a group of Shawnee and other natives laid siege to Fort Pitt. And groups of raiders would go out from Fort Pitt, and we came under attack at Elliot's Fort. Well, my nephew, John Elliott, had gone out hunting, and when the Indians attacked, and he ran across a militia, a company commander from William McKinney, who had been wounded, and he was running and shooting against some Indians. And William Buchanan kind of had been shot in the stomach and was basically dying. And he was asking John if he could carry him from the field, which didn't scout. But John at 17 was not strong enough to carry him from the field. So in his dying breath, Captain Buchanan hands John his gun and says, "Take my gun, and should you ever have the opportunity to shoot an Indian, do so in my name." Now, my wife and I, hearing that story, decided to commission this painting. That was, well. That didn't solve the problem. We had to begin to drive the Native Americans back and relieve the siege. Now, Bouquet had stayed in America, and so he gathered British regulars and our militia units at Carlisle, and we moved out, and we would encountered the Native Americans in an area called Bushy Run, and through some stealth operations, was able to lure the Native Americans and defeat them, and they returned back to the Ohio country, and Bouquet was able to relieve the siege of Fort Pitt, and eventually had a treaty in the Ohio area where the Native American tribes released a number of hostages. So it was time for me, now that I had been fighting for a few years, my daughter's in-law decided it was time for me to get married. And they had picked out somebody they thought would be the perfect bride for me. And she was the daughter of a Presbyterian minister, named Thomas. And so Nancy, Thomas, and I got married. And a couple of children, I began to settle down, try to become a good farmer, and raise children. Unfortunately, Mary died, and I was left with 2 small children. Well, about this time, you may have heard of a meeting in Philadelphia, different problems, and they decided they would create the United States. And I didn't really want to leave home and join the Pennsylvania line because I had 2 children to support. But they did reconstitute the Pennsylvania militia. And late in the war, General Cornwallis moved up to the Carolinas and through the Appalachian Mountains, and were recruiting colonial loyalists into Tory troops and others. And so it was decided that we would recruit militia from Virginia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania to try to alleviate the problem in the Appalachian Mountains. And we managed to find the British under the leadership of a Major Ferguson in an area in the South Carolina, North Carolina, called Kings Mountain. And so we attacked Ferguson and his troops. They were on the hill, they would come down the hill firing their muskets and with bayonets, and we would retreat, hide behind trees, wait, come out. And of course, most of us were really good shots with our rifles. We couldn't do mass fire, but we could do a lot of damage. And we managed, because Ferguson was on his horse, hiking around, blowing the whistle, come get him, boys. He had a really good target. So we managed to put about 7 balls, rifle balls into it. Once he was dead, the militia disappeared. Kings Mountain was an important battle of the Revolution because Cornwallis decided that he had to retreat to the Chesapeake Bay to get reinforced. Reinforcements never happened. The French came down in the Battle of the Capes and enlisted in Washington into the Continental Army, and Rochambeau of the French forces surrounding Cornwall and Yorktown, and there was a surrender. And so that sort of did the end of the revolution. So I could go home and worry about raising my kids and other things. Well, we had a new nation. And that nation needed a way of raising money. Tax, because all the taxation in the colonial times was mostly based on land taxes, but there was no national tax. It was voluntary contributions from the different states, which some of them contributed, some others. Washington, of course, was elected as the first president. It's the same Major Washington and Colonel Washington that I had kind of roles now had been commander-in-chief of the army and now was president. And Alexander Hamilton was thinking, how can I get revenue from the new government? Well, he decided that he was going to place a tax on distilled liquors. Well, one of the problems that the Western farmers had is how to get our crops to market. I was not into whiskey making, but a number of my neighbors were, because you would make up the crop, the grain crops and stuff, and turn it into whiskey. I was more into dairy products, cheese and other stuff. Well, in Western Pennsylvania, some of the locals took somewhat umbrage to this new tax. And so they were harassing the revenue collectors with other stuff. And that was causing quite a sensation. So President Washington called out the militia, the unit, and he rode by carriage from Philadelphia out to Carlisle. So he reviewed the militia troops, and my neighbor and principal of our unit introduced me to President Washington. And he said, "Oh, you might remember Tom Elliott." Surprisingly, Washington did remember. And then I said, "Yeah, we probably had a disagreement over Braddock's Road." He said, "We should have always taken Braddock's Road. I really don't forgive you for that." But it did my heart pretty good that he recognized me, and then we found out I participated in Kings Mountain. Well, we Westerners found something that was really amusing, because at the time of the Whiskey Rebellion in 1794, George Washington owned the largest distilleries in America. Now, what's interesting is they have discovered it's on this plantation in Mount Vernon, and they have reconstructed that distillery. And if you go visit that distillery, you could, they produce whiskey there. So you could buy George Washington's whiskey. They kind of like White Lightning. Because it wasn't aged, that's the big difference.
Right.
It's fresh. Yeah. But after the whiskey rebellion, I really retired and spent the rest of my day as a farmer. So now, as you can tell, I'm outfitted as a over the mountain man. I don't know if I showed you the match code. Blanket code, anyway.
Yeah, you did.
Yeah. Okay, one of the things that I'll sort of take my hat off. Go back to Jim Battles. One of the things that has been fun is we all have our family stories and who our ancestors were and other things. I decided that I would take some of these family stories and turn them into novels. And so on the table are several. Of course, you've heard about you over the mountain with you, if you want to hear more of that. Copies. Over the mountain and then I had an ancestor who may have been a privateer in Queen Anne's War. And so I decided, what might have great grandfather Ephraim Bogardus done between 1704 and 1719? Well, that story turned out to be what war was. And that's the speed later. And then I had another ancestor, James Avery, who befriended Uncas. Now, many of you have heard of the last of the Mohicans. Well, Uncas was the first of the Mohicans. And this is a novel about the relationship of Uncas and James Avery. James Avery was the leader of the Connecticut militia. Now, by the way, the Mohicans had never left. They have the Mohican Sun Casino in their territory. So anyway, that's the story between the two, because one of the things that Uncas did was teach the Connecticut militia how to fight like the Native Americans. Because they found that militia tactics, which were based on European warfare.
Yeah.
They would laugh because, you know, in Europe, you beat the drums and you had your red uniforms and you march along, and early colonial militia would wear pikeman's armor. And if you ever wear that, you walk along, you make a lot of noise. And then this novel is about Anka Johns Bogardus. Anka Johns was a widow who married Edvardus Bogardus. Edvardus Bogardus was the first permanent minister of New Amsterdam. And they had a farm called Dominie's Bowery, which if you map the boundaries of Dominie's Bowery, it almost perfectly fits with the boundaries of today an area of New York City known as Tribeca. And so there's been over 300 years of arguments over that land title. All of Tribeca should belong to me. That's been a lot of fun, and one of the things that you can do now, there's been quite a revolution in self-publishing.
Right.
And so I use Lulu Press. If anybody's interested, you can purchase copies of my books on Amazon. I have a few interested. But I encourage any of you, now that you've done all the research, you've probably got a really good bunch of stories in your family. And one of the advantages that you can pass this on to your kids sometimes. So, does anybody got?
You didn't tell them why you started doing these books. You were telling me about when COVID came.
COVID came, yeah, and I've been doing a lot of genealogy, keep myself bored, getting bored, I started writing.
So you started writing books.
It's kept me busy. Anyway,
Yeah.
so anybody?
Any questions for James?
I got one, bothering me for a long time,
Okay,
but it gets back to the military, and I understand you got a Navy background.
yes.
But I've always wondered, why is it that a major general in the Army has 2 stars, yet a lieutenant general has 3 stars?
Well, you have a brigadier general is 1 star. Major general is 2, the lieutenant general has 3. I had no idea that. One of the problems we did have in.
It seems to me they got them mixed up.
Well, yeah, like, well, I don't really have an answer to that. One of the problems we had in the Navy was we had The flag officer in the Navy starts with rear admiral. The vice admiral. Full. And the Navy. A rear admiral had 2 stars, which really upset the other services. So now we have a rear admiral lower half and a rear admiral upper half.
Oh, 1 and 2.
So you have now a newly appointed.
My father was a Lieutenant J.G.
Oh, yes.
Junior grade.
Junior grade, yeah, that's the same as a first lieutenant. Because a lieutenant, a second lieutenant in the Navy is an ensign. And then you have a first lieutenant, so you go ensign, JG, lieutenant commander, which is the same as a major. And then you have a commander, which is the same as the lieutenant colonel, and a captain is the same as a full colonel. And we often refer to the captains as 4 strikers, which are 4 strikers. One of the fun things that I had this past March, my son got promoted to full captain, and I got to swear him. That was really cool. Yeah,
Okay. Well, good, well, I have something for you here.
Side race. Side race.
Yeah.
Look at that. We gotta get a picture with that. Okay, so what this is a certificate of appreciation in recognition of your support. The McKinney chapter takes the Sons of the American Revolution Fighters, and we program the Over the Mountain Mission chapter this day. So thank you so much. You probably got no room left on your, you got cameras here, no room left on your walls.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay. But maybe there's enough room to sit that in your wall somewhere with all your other things. Thank you so much. You resonated something that I can tell, right? Pennsylvania and Pittsburgh and all of that. Pretty cool. Okay, here, so next up, we'll go into our business meeting, new business first. We have basically some supplemental certificates to be awarded by, and Richard Bonaparte or Richard Charles will award those certificates.
Thanks, Tom. So the registrar itself doesn't typically get an opportunity to come up here and kind of brag a little bit, but hey, Kevin, if you want, you mind coming up for a second? So Kevin is a great chapter member here. He's spent a lot of time putting together a number of his ancestors. He and I have partnered on many supplementals. It's been a wonderful journey. Great.
He still says wonderful.
And how many? Nice.
How many?
We've done not 9
8 or 9.
10, yeah, and we've got another 3.
Yeah.
Oh, my.
What's interesting is, you know, like I've uncovered 18, and I know there's more.
Oh, yeah, there's
So we're
always
gonna
more.
continue to find more
Yes.
as you go through it, you know?
I just got from the Historical Society of Morris County, New Jersey. I just found something that'll uncover a line that'll give me at least.
Oh, that's fantastic.
I just have to mention,
Yeah,
we have, both of us know a guy very well who has 50 something.
Yes, yeah.
yeah.
We
And
don't,
he submitted them all, 42 of them at one time.
Bill Hurst, 55, 56, something like that. It's just like, oh my gosh.
Well, Kevin, you know, they've been improved.
Yeah.
Many of them have been improved, so they start trickling in, and that's what we're seeing now. So I wanted you to see,
Yes.
there's Prince Alden's,
Right.
right? Look great. And here's Philip Farber's. If you want to hold them both up, we'll get a nice.
Here we go. Picture.
I've got your record copies too, so I'll be giving this to you afterward.
Hey.
Do you want to take half a minute, and just share
Well,
a
probably go under 2 each. if That's all right.
2 each?
Sure, that's fine.
Okay.
I'll try my best.
And I'll put your record copies with this
Thank
too.
you so much.
Yeah.
First one's easy, easier, I guess. Philip Farber. He was born in 1757, son of Johannes Farber from Germany and Elizabeth. Married to Margaret Wallace. He ultimately had 10 children. And so what does a good 18-year-old boy, German boy do in New Jersey in 1776? Well, he joins the Continental Army. And he wound up serving in Ticonderoga for a year. Unfortunately, his year came up 4 months before the British invaded in the siege. And so he was stationed at Fort Ticonderoga for like 8 months, and then for the last 4 months, he was at Mount Independence, which is like just across the river. And apparently we see his unit helped build Fort Stanwix, Fort Dayton, and it supposedly fought off Indian raids in Johnstown and Sherman Flats, but I can't quite confirm that. He married in 1777 after his service. When he was 39 years old, he went to Sandy Township in what is now Stark County, Ohio, near Dayton, and moved the entire family. He was the second settler in the township. And then my ancestor, his daughter, married 2 years after they got to that township. And his grave was marked by the DAR on October 1, 2011.
Oh, cool.
So that one was easy. We had some published ones. So, okay, now this is almost funny and sad. Okay. Prince Alden. Yes, they used the name Prince back then. He was actually the great grandson of Jonathan Alden of the Mayflower. He married Mary Fitch. Mary Fitch, I have to include this. Her ancestors include Reverend James Fitch, who studied under Reverend Thomas Hooker in Connecticut. It's a very famous reverend. She was also a descendant of Major John Mason, who was involved in the Pico War and Mystic Massacre. Prince Alden had been ultimately a captain in the French and Indian War. And in 1860, he was promoted to lieutenant, later captain, and was a quartermaster. In 1761, he purchased a half right in the Susquehanna Company. And I'm not sure if everyone knows about the Susquehanna Company, but that was where they purchased land in the Wyoming Valley in what was Connecticut claimed land in Pennsylvania. And in 1778, there was called the Wyoming Valley Massacre, where Prince was 59 years old at that point. And on July 3rd, a contingent of about 300 American militia met a much larger invading army of British regulars. We see the Americans were overwhelmed, driven into panic retreat, with the Indians scalping every soldier they could lay hands on. The several American forts in the valley were surrendered or abandoned. Invaders killed many civilians, destroyed houses, dropped cattle. As news of the massacre spread along the river, settlers in the valley fled in panic, joined by thousands more from the whole of the North Branch and West Branch regions of the Susquehanna. What came to be known as the Great Runaway. Only 60 of the Americans managed to escape. Only 5 were taken prisoners. Some of the loyalists tortured an unknown number of prisoners and eventually sold. Butler reported that 227 American scalps were taken. And there's an annual program at the monument in the area of Wilkes-Barre for the Wyoming Valley Massacre. 178 names of patriots killed in the battle were listed on the Wyoming Monument, as well as the names of about a dozen militia who were killed and died in captivity a day or so prior. The possible explanation for the difference between the 178 and the 277 is that allegedly numerous civilians, instead of surrendering to Colonel Butler, elected to flee and died of exposure in a swamp known as the Shades of Death after that. 2 years after that, Prince Alden wound up serving for 30 days at 61 years old, were under a Captain John Franklin, where I'm assuming he was just basically holding a musket and standing by. But it counts as service, and with this approval, I finally completed the whole Patriot passenger thing for this guy, so.
Well, congratulations, that was a lot of work.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you both. Oh, my goodness. Okay, so let's see here. I think next up here right quick, we've got,
It's on the list.
on the list, yep. So I've already put something out on this. I won't spend any time on this other than, basically, we're starting our campaign for the Wreaths Across America. We basically sponsor a little cemetery. Really, there's 2 little cemeteries up in Anna, Texas. And we committed to they've got about 93 veterans between those 2. And we committed each year for several years now to get at least 80 of those. Now, usually by before it's over with, we get them all. But anyway, 80 of those. So please think about that. You've got it. I've got a link you can click on. You can put it in there. You can also either honor, a parent, an uncle, or somebody, or you, I'm sorry, remember them, or you can honor someone currently in the military that's still living. So anyway, please consider doing that. Again, it's $17 a read, so, I mean, you can't even eat a meal for $17, you know. Some drinks cost that much, right, depending on all you put in them, so please consider that. Usually we need to get them in by like the middle of November or so, or something like that, yes.
There may be, I'm not sure, in prior years, there was a 3 for 5 deal.
Yeah, so the 3 for 5 was at the very first of the year in January, and some of y'all participated in that. You could buy, if you bought 2 reads, you got 1 free.
Okay.
They've changed that now. You've got to get, basically, you get $5 a read that you buy now, and they're 17. So it's not as good as it was, but there still is that. And we have 2 options, but this chapter, just because it's the way I think about this, we should be taking advantage of. So basically, we pour that money back into buying more reads. So chapter does not make any money on that at all. So that's sort of just how we do it, but it seems like that's the right thing to do to me. So anyway, any other questions on that one? Okay, all right. So the next thing up is officer nominating committee, and Pete, you want to say a few words about that?
Yeah, Tom asked me to see if we couldn't put it together a nomination committee to select the officers to the chapter for next year. So if any of you that are here would like to be on the committee, please let me know. My name is Pete McClellan, and happy to add it to the list.
Yep.
And we will be in the process of presenting to the chapter a list of a slate
Right.
of proposed officers, and then we'll vote on it in December and inaugurate everybody in January.
Right. So we'll have a list. Basically, we'll have a list in November.
Right.
So think about it. I mean, most of these jobs don't take all that much time. I mean, you know, we meet once a month, but still, there's not a lot of things. And sometimes it just spikes up for one little small period of time, like the ROTC thing that Pete's been doing for years. It's just basically toward the end of the school year, you know, we asked several schools to give us their ROTC cadets, and we hand them a certificate of medal, you know, and that's it. So I mean, this is not like all consuming nights and weekends. Oh, that's what I'm thinking. Please consider that. Okay, the next thing, we did get the notice today. I think most of you should have got it it's an email, I believe. Basically, the 2026 dues invoices have been mailed out. That means they've got them and they've handed them over to be mailed. They're bulk mailed, so they're going to appear at some point in time. Okay, so you can, at that point, then you can make a decision. We'll have your membership card in there. I'm really excited because they got them out and get them out a lot earlier than they used to do, which is sometime in December. It seems like every time, but they are going out now. You can also go online and go ahead and pay your membership dues if you want to do that online also, which is, to me, the easiest way to go do that. But I want to let you know they are coming in the mail, so you should get those. For y'all, for any of y'all that are dual members like Ted, I'll be getting those cards out within the next month for your membership card for your dual membership. Okay. So then we got that one done. Let's see here. I skipped right over. Thank you, Jared. Watch me close. I Pete. I skipped right over you, but go right ahead. This is Medal of Honor Museum.
Right now, we have 15 folks that have signed up for the tour of the Medal of Honor Museum. And for those who said that they would like to go for the box lunch, I've made an executive decision that we probably want to go for the standard box lunch versus the premium box lunch. I know, I'm sorry. But what I'm going to be doing is contacting everybody to find out what type of sandwich you would like to have in that standard box lunch. They come in roasted turkey, honey ham, roast beef, or grilled veggie wrap. So those are the choices. And I'll just need to contact everybody to get your preference so that we can have the chef prepare those box lunches. So that we'll be ready for us
Okay.
on Monday the 27th.
Okay, so how many people in here right now going?
Well, there are 10 members and 5 guests.
Yeah. Bonaparte's, are you going?
No, we're not sure yet.
Okay,
We're still kind of talking through it.
I noticed you.
We have a lot of commitments like this year.
Well, I have you down.
What?
I have you down.
You do?
Yeah.
But you're gonna do.
It's the 27th, right? Is that-
Yes, Monday the
It's Monday, the
27th.
27th.
How much is that?
Well, it's, if you're 65 or older, it's
See ya.
$21
Okay.
for the ticket. And then,
What, 27th of October?
it's a Monday.
That's a Monday. Okay, yeah.
And we'll meet there at 10 o'clock, and that's when the doors open.
I'll confirm with you.
That'd be
Yeah,
fine.
for sure.
Yeah, that'd be fine. So anyway, yeah, well,
So do they have a restaurant there if you didn't get the box lunch?
there are plenty of restaurants
But in the,
around here.
but in the museum, there's a restaurant, okay.
The standard box lunch is $15 each. Versus 25 for the premium. I figured standard was part of the acceptable choice.
Yes.
What do you get for your extra $10?
Pardon me?
What is the extra $10 bring you? An apple?
And a bag of chips.
And a bag of chips.
No, on the premium, your choices are the chicken bacon caprese, I don't even know what that is. A prime rib sandwich or a Waldorf chicken salad with salmon. So you're welcome to step up for a premium if you want to.
Sounds good.
But I decided we didn't want to go that far. But I can be persuaded.
Very easily. Any other questions about that? Okay. Okay, let's see, so I'll skip over that. Our next meeting is on November the 20th.
The 20?
November the 20th,
I
yeah,
think that's right.
yeah.
Yeah.
On the back, you'll see the upcoming events here. I've got quite a few of them listed. I'll let y'all go through them, but anyway, you always got, yes, sir.
On the next meeting in November, the CAR advisor and hopefully the president of the society will be in attendance.
They are gonna come.
Well, definitely we got a commitment from Missy Lopes.
So again, for y'all that don't know, basically, we have the CAR, which basically Pete's our liaison for. And he goes to quite a few of the meetings and does things like that. Basically, they come and give us a little talk about what they're doing, if they have a special project. And then at the end of the day, it will be Peter now that will write them a check for $250 is what I believe we've been giving them every year.
I have to check.
Okay, I think that's it, $250. So anyway, so just another way to help support.
Massey Bolton Society.
Yeah.
CAR.
So anyway, just another way that we support them, so that, and also, oh, and by the way, it's supposed to be a secret, but the John Ashton, DAR region will be here to make some honor presentations for the help we did when we worked at the museum and then some other things that we've been doing with it. So she's coming to basically tell you thank you for that, so. Try to come to
Quick question.
Providing greetings.
greetings.
Pete, when do you need that check?
For next November.
Okay,
No.
so bring it to the next meeting?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Okay, let's see here, right quick here, like I said, you can see the rest of the things that are on there, so I'll go through those. If you have any questions, you always contact me. Okay, so next up, let's see here, we have the October meeting minutes. Those are in the newsletter and are also online. Do I hear a motion to accept those minutes as written?
So moved.
Peter, second. We have a second. Okay, all those in, any discussion? Any discussion? Hearing none. I'm almost getting there now, hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous, okay. With that then, we have the treasurer's report.
Sir,
Peter, I think you're probably, oh, there you go.
I can talk about
You talk about,
I'll talk about
I'll let you talk about
small group. All right, so funds at our last meeting were $8,920.87. Our expenses this month were $75 for speaker honorarium for our August meeting. We paid for dinner for poster winner and family at $70.47. And then a monthly subscription to the registrar, which is $27.05. We received no income this month. So our available funds are $8,748.35. That does not include the $1,860, which is sitting in the project 2026 fund. Any questions? None? Really? Hearing none? Thank you.
I would say since we let Richard get up here and make it hard here for the first time, I don't know, anyway. I think right now, I got the numbers right in my head, right now, he's in various stages on 14 applications,
Well, we've got
or is it more than that?
20 in flight right now,
Well,
or are not started. 16, we have a number that have gone to state, so
Okay.
another.
So the point is that he's working really hard, guys. I mean, we just they just keep coming in. So it's a good thing. It's a good thing, but and he loves it. I know. I'm not sure about Lena. He loves
He knows I love it.
Anyway, okay. Thank you so much again for what you do.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's see here. I think that's it. Does anyone have any other business or announcements? About 2 more minutes. Okay. So hearing none, if you stand up for your benediction. May the blessings of God Almighty rest upon us in all our works done in His name. May He give us the life to guide us, the courage to support us, and the love to unite us now and forever. Amen. Okay, and with that, let's see here. We're gonna do the recessional. Until we meet again, let us remember our obligation to our forefathers who gave us our Constitution, the Bill of Rights, an independent Supreme Court, and a nation of free men. Okay, I declare this meeting adjourned. Thanks everyone for coming.
Play ball.
The book.